Sheet Talkers. Welcome.
Good
Hi,
evening, everyone.
Jamie.
Hey,
How
Sandy, how
are
are you?
you?
I'm doing pretty good, actually. Really excited. It's been a
Well,
freaking emotional filled week,
has
you know?
it?
Yeah. Mom's been
How's
in
mom
town.
doing?
Great. Yesterday was her birthday, and man, I cooked her. She wanted some steaks, and I was like, oh, Mom, we're going to do this legit. I was like, I'm going to make you some steaks like you ain't never had before. And they came out
They
fantastic.
looked really good in the picture.
Thank you.
Super,
Thank you.
super
Yeah.
impressed.
She loved it. Even my wife came down and she was just like, "Oh my gosh, this is the best steak you've ever made." She's like, "I'm
Oh,
not hungry. I need
really?
to stop eating." She goes, "But I can't stop because it's so good." Even the baked potatoes, threw those suckers in the air fryer, Sandy. They were good.
Oh, really?
I'll tell you later about it, but they were, yeah, off the chain.
Awesome. Hey, Brenda. Hello, hello.
Good
Thank you for
evening,
being
Brenda.
on here.
Thanks for hanging out with us tonight.
So,
If you're
guys,
joining us tonight, say hello in the comments so we know who you are and who's coming and where you're watching from. So,
yes.
yeah,
So I hope everyone has had a great week. I've had a great week because I'm excited to bring on the author, JD McCabe, because I know I y'all are probably so sick of me telling you how excited I am. So, everyone, um, I have to tell you that I'm gonna try not to be a rambling fool, but I already am a rambling fool. But anyway, just to recap, a couple of weeks ago, I found JD on TikTok, and just in case y'all had not already heard the story, originally I thought JD was selling like some hair loss and weight loss stuff, so I just kept on scrolling, and Eric actually said, "San, you might want to watch this," and so boy, am I forever grateful that I did because I bought what JD was selling, and oh my gosh, we do
big
have
time.
lots everybody coming in here. So guys, okay, all of you that stay active, talking, asking questions, sharing this, you guys will be eligible. You will be entered in a drawing to win an autographed copy of the third gift. Look at this. JD
What?
was so kind enough to
Oh,
send this
look
to
at
me, you
that.
guys. And I almost don't even
That's
want to give it
cool.
away to y'all. You don't
Wait,
even
do I get
deserve
to
it.
participate in that? Because
No, you
I
don't.
like.
No,
Okay.
I'm sorry, you don't. But anyway, thank you for
I
asking.
hope Dr. Pineapples is watching. Does she get to
Dr.
participate in
Pineapples gets
it?
to participate. Look at her. She came in clutch right here.
Yeah.
Awesome. Okay, without further ado. Oh, Jamie.
Oh, look, that's my niece right there. Hi, Mika.
Hi, Nicole.
She is going to be going to college up here in Illinois.
How
Crazy.
exciting.
Fun.
JD,
Yeah.
Jamie, do you have his bio?
I do. You ready for me?
Yes, I'm ready for you.
All right. So while you're nerding out a little bit, Sandy, let me just tell you, I'm excited to talk to him tonight because you
Okay.
guys know that Sandy is in love with like the true crime portions of things. And although I can't stomach that too well because I'm a little weak in that area, I do really enjoy. Hi, Tammy. I do really enjoy understanding people's mindsets and perspectives and the experiences that they go through things. So
Right.
I'm really excited to talk to JD tonight too. Without further ado, let me tell you a little bit about JD though. His name is JD Danny McCabe. He grew up in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania as the middle child of a very large family. From an early age, he was independent and a practical realist. The first time author began writing his diary as a historical journal of events in the demise of his marriage that evolved quickly and came without context. Danny was encouraged to share this personal and unbelievable voyage in rediscovering himself by the many people who witnessed and heard about his journey firsthand. He is blessed with two beautiful adult children. JD resides in the Charleston, South Carolina area. And without further ado, please help me welcome JD Danny McCabe to the Shandy Talk Sheet Show.
Yay, JD,
Yay!
welcome.
Hey,
Oh,
folks,
wait.
how are you? Thank you for having me. I'm just as excited as you are to talk to you guys and your audience. So thank you for having me. It's a
Let me do
tremendous
this legit for you, JD, okay?
So
All
JD,
right.
I don't guess I realized you're from Charleston, and Charleston, or you reside in Charleston. Charleston is beautiful.
Yeah, it's a beautiful area. I moved down here a little over a year ago. So I lived
Oh,
in North.
okay.
Yeah, I lived in North Carolina. I moved down here at the height of COVID. I lived in North Carolina for 19 years, made my
Okay.
way from Pittsburgh to Kentucky for 5 years and then North Carolina for 19 years, and got to a point where I just needed a change of scenery emotionally. I was living too close to where we had lived and everything had transpired. So I'm like, it's time to go. So I'm kind of impulsively upped and left, but I'm happy I made the move. So yeah.
Wow.
So
So
I
you
love
just moved
Charleston. It's
last year.
very historic.
Yeah, it is very historic. Yeah, so I moved last year, so I'm about 20 minutes outside of Charleston. So
Okay.
Okay, awesome. We did a ghost tour in Charleston, and then we did like a little buggy tour. I just absolutely loved it. And then, man, when it rains, it's
it's
crazy
floods.
because it floods, but then your water disappears like super quickly. It's like, man, y'all got like an amazing system. Anyway,
Yeah, the power of sand, the power
yeah,
of Sandy, the power of Sandy.
there you go.
Don't help her get her head too much bigger,
All
okay?
right,
Yeah,
I'm sorry.
right.
I'm sorry.
It's
No,
okay.
I love it.
I'll come up with something for you too, Jamie. Give me a minute.
Yeah.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
Give him a minute. He's working on it. So, JD, before we dive into why you are here with us tonight, tell us a little bit about yourself.
So I'm a first-time author. I never envisioned writing a book,
Mhm.
but I was compelled to write a book, and folks will hopefully understand why after we go through some of the story. But my full-time job is I've been in the pharmaceutical industry for 30 plus years. So
Wow.
Okay.
yeah, and that came in handy as I had to dig into my now ex-wife's pharmacy claims and medical claims and figure out what in the heck was going on. But yeah, so that's my full time job, and I've created a small little business around the book, The Third Gift.
So awesome. And so, what was your inspiration to get on TikTok and share about your book?
Well, that's a great question. So I have a young lady out of Pittsburgh that started helping me with social media. I was doing it all on my own, and I wasn't very effective with it. And she told me 6 months ago, she said, "Well, I think we need to put you on TikTok as well." And my ignorance thought, well, it was dancing and singing and what have you, and
Right.
I had no idea the explosive power of TikTok. And so I will be forever grateful to TikTok for what has transpired. So we put snippets of the various podcasts up there. I'll do some of my own videos that I will shoot, and I will send them to her, and she fixes them up very nicely and puts them out there. So yeah, it's been very exciting to be on that platform. So
Well, I mean, and that's where I found you because I don't think otherwise I would have ever found your book. So, yes, definitely kudos to your assistant there because, man, I've gone back and, of course, I've watched all of your TikToks and wow, boy, do you ever have a story.
So it's interesting, JD. I took TikTok off, and I tell my family, let's stay away from TikTok. And my thought was nothing good ever comes from TikTok. But after hearing about your story, thinking the origination coming from TikTok, I'm like, I think I may have to rephrase what I'm saying now. So thank you
yeah,
for that. Okay.
yeah, you're welcome. It's actually very outside of my story. It's very and entertaining and educational, and to see some of the bigger names that are on there. So everybody's involved with that magical platform. So
Oh, yeah, I mean, you go from like, I'm making recipes off of TikTok, obviously buying books from TikTok.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, it's pretty powerful. So, JD, let's go ahead and start because we have so much to cover, a lot of ground to cover. And if you're okay, audience is going to ask you questions. I'm going to be asking you questions,
Yep.
and we're kind of going to do like I guess we'll do like a not brief, a synopsis of your book, as much as you want to dive into, and then we're going to go back and then dive into like some of the heavier asked questions, especially in your TikTok, especially the questions that I had, and some of the
Sure.
stuff that you've had to repeat yourself, if that's okay with you.
That is fine. Let's keep it informal, and yeah. I mean, so I'll try to briefly take a 360-page book and grind it down to a couple of minutes, but in a nutshell. So the title of it is The Third Gift: My Dance with the Devil and Her Mother. The first two gifts are my kids, so they're now young adults, 26 and 22. And the third gift, I don't mind telling people. I mean, the cat's kind of out of the bag. Was an accusation that she made to me against me, accusing me of giving her an incurable sexually transmitted disease. So
Right.
herpes, the gift that keeps on giving. So
Yes.
actually, my son helped me come up with the title because, as we will talk about it, it emotionally set me free. It was God's God smack across the face to say, young man, your marriage is over. Okay.
Wow.
So
Right.
that revelation took place as we went into our first mediation. And for folks that don't, I've had some questions on TikTok. What is mediation? But in North Carolina, mediation is an attempt to settle things and stay outside of stay out of the logjam court system, which we were unable to do.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
So it was at the first mediation that she made this revelation. She's in one room with her attorney. I'm in another room with my attorney. You've got an attorney going back and forth. And of course, you've got the legal meter running the whole time, right?
Right.
At 300 plus per hour. And so after they made their first offer to me, which my now ex-wife was a stay-at-home mom. We were fortunate enough that financially she could stay at home. She would later spin that to try to play it off that she gave up her career for me.
Right.
So we can talk about that, but so yeah, after they made their first offer, my attorney said, look, just brace yourself. We're obviously not going to accept their first offer. We'll negotiate through this, but they're going to try to take off both your arms, both your legs, and any other appendage they can find.
Right.
And sure enough, the first offer, they wanted me to pay her more money than I made per year.
Oh my gosh.
Then besides that, though, and the beauty of the book is all of it's in the book. The first offer's in the book. All of the legal proceedings are in the book. I took advantage of the concept of public records. So our domestic violence trials in the book, our 4-day alimony trials in the book, with the testimony from various folks, including my ex-mother-in-law that testified against me. But anyhow, so after
JD,
they made
let me interrupt you for a second. Hold on,
Go ahead.
because this was one of the most frustrating things for me in the book is how much our legal system is so against. In this case, I felt like it was just so against you. Like you couldn't win for losing with the legal system, and I was just so frustrated with you because it's just like evidence, all the evidence that you brought in. It was like, you know what? We're just going to hold that against you, JD, not against her.
Right.
And anyway, go ahead, JD.
Yeah. So so the mediator, the third attorney, going back and forth between both rooms, just quite nonchalantly, just said, "Oh, by the way, she wanted me to let you know that you gave her herpes too," and dropped the test on the table from LabCorp. I don't mind saying who it was.
Right.
And given my 30 years in the industry, I was able to quickly look down, and first of all, I was stunned. Like, what? I wasn't that kind with it. I screamed and had some few kind words.
Yeah.
And as I looked at it, I'm like, okay, yeah, she's got herpes. And my first fear was that she infected me.
Yeah. Yeah.
Even though we had a rocky marriage coming out of my 9-day stay in a psychiatric facility, which we could talk about that as well. We were still on occasion intimate. And in April of 2015, which was 2 months before this first mediation, we were together 3 nights in a row. And I'm like, okay, fine. We hadn't been together for 4 months. All of that's laid out in the book too. And my daughter,
JD, and it was all by design, right? The planned nights.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And so, that was my fear, was that I'm going to test positive. And so July 9th of 2015 is when I got my results back. And so that's my new birthday. I've changed my birthday.
Yeah.
So I tested negative, and I thought at that point, okay, things are over. We're going to hold out. We're going to hold out for a month till we mediate again. I'll drop my grenade on her that I tested negative, and it didn't end there. So we kept moving forward. But I must say, the craziest part of the story, and there's the second chapter in the book's called The First 17. We were happily married.
Yeah.
For 17 years?
17 years in a very happy, stable marriage. People, on social media or whatever would question it. But my daughter said it best when things started to fall apart. I remember going up when I was still living in the home. I remember going up and she was sitting in a closet crying. She was 15.
Your daughter was?
Yeah. She's like, she always called me daddy. And so that's one of the favorite chapters in my book is chapter 19 called Hi Daddy, when she came back into my life. So she was alienated from me for 2 years. And she's sitting in the closet crying. She said, Daddy, what happened? You and Mom were like teenagers in love. What happened? And I had no explanation for her at that point. None. Zero. So the third gift really is a gift. I mean, and God has some irony, right? He says, "All right, I'm going to give you the gift that keeps on giving, to
Right.
set you free emotionally." Because it was at that point that I'm like, okay, everything that she had been subtly accusing me of for the last 6 years of our marriage, and intensely in the spring of 2014 is when her mother got involved. Um, and yeah, I mean, it was God set me free to enable me to reestablish myself as a man, as a father, and to realize, okay, you didn't do this. And so that was the trigger for me to begin looking at 5 years of medical claims, 5 years of pharmacy claims. I had no idea what I had access to at my fingertips.
Yeah.
And there were many, many, many nights that I kicked myself going, damn it, you had access to all of this the whole time and you never looked.
Right.
So when I
So
dug into those, I not only uncovered that she had, my first thought was, well, if she's got herpes, which she does, she's got to be on some medication. And so
Right.
I go into her pharmacy claims, and the first thing that I see the morning after, I mean, I didn't sleep obviously, but the morning after, as I'm heading back to Pennsylvania to be with family, you know, a nice 10-hour ride, took me 16 because I kept pulling over, pulling out the iPad as the thoughts were running through my head. I noticed in her pharmacy claims there were 2 prescriptions every month that were marked private. And I'm like, what the hell is this?
Right.
Initially, I thought it was to treat, I knew nothing about STDs. I learned more than I ever want to know about STDs, every one of them, how they're treated, regimens. I mean, I spent hours looking at the STD treatment
Pictures.
guidelines. Pictures. Yep. Spent hours and hours and hours. And so, um, I thought, no, well, you know, once I got educated about it, I'm like, no, this is not for herpes. But I saw 5 years worth, because I only had access going back 2010 because I switched employers. So I
Uh-huh.
spent 5 years every month, 2 prescriptions marked private, where I could not see the name of the medication. So I was the primary card holder. I paid all the medical bills. So I just simply reached out to the right person at our insurance company, and I had to go up the ladder, but I'm like, I demanded, I'm like, I'm paying all these medical bills. I want to know what it is, and I want to know who wrote it.
Right.
So my first discovery was that she was addicted to Adderall and Adderall XR. She had an amphetamine addiction. And I would later
for
discover,
5 years.
for 5 years at least.
And you
And we
never once saw a jar in the house? And you never saw her take a pill or anything?
I picked up a lot of her medications because for 17 years of our marriage, she claimed to have had an autoimmune disease.
Right.
And,
Right.
I believed it. In our broken
Why
healthcare
wouldn't you, right?
in our broken healthcare system, you can bounce around, and you don't get the answer you want. You go to the next health system and you tell them, this is what I have. And they have no way of cross-checking it. And they believe you. And they
Yeah.
give you whatever medications you want for that illness. Well, it turns out, again, this is all discovery that happened over the next 3-4 years as we move through the court system. Turns out she doesn't have it. It's all in her head. And so there was a prestigious clinic down in Florida that she made 2 trips to. I didn't go with her. I was with, you know, our kids at the time. And I never asked her to see the medical records and all that. But once we subpoenaed the medical records, because their claim was that she's too sick to work and he's going to need to, you know, pay her alimony for the next 17 years till she retires. Mayo Clinic, I gave away the name, but the Mayo Clinic in Jacksonville, Florida said, no, she doesn't have an autoimmune disease. And if she does, she has a very rare, very minor form of it.
Oh my
So,
gosh.
I mean, but I will say, chapter, again, we were very happily married for 17 years. There were some red flags that I missed early on when we started dating, which
That
are
was one
now,
of the questions. Did you feel
yeah.
like you missed some red flags during those years?
Joe, excellent question. Yeah, I think the first big red flag that I missed was when we started dating. She was dating two other guys casually, right? I wasn't looking for anybody. I was just casually dating
You
her.
were
It was
dating, yeah.
nothing serious. But she told me when I first met her that she had been married before. She had been married for 8 weeks, never moved in with this individual. It's all in the book, but he was 10 years her senior. He had an 11-year-old daughter. She was looking for a father figure, but as it turns out, he was controlling, he was abusive, he had jealousy issues. Well, that would be the same story she'd spin on me 20 plus years later. So that was
Right.
when I first met her, my gut was like, you know, she's been married before. Maybe you just let that go. But I ran into her at a bar in Pittsburgh, and we kind of reconnected there, and the rest is history, as they say. Um,
Right.
yeah,
Can
But she was she married twice before you,
she was
JD?
married once.
Just once. Okay.
She was
Okay.
one, but her mother and her grandmother would later corroborate, which gave me a little peace of mind. They're like, yeah, she made a huge mistake, and she had been estranged from her father for 10 years. She was very,
Right.
very close to her father in her childhood. And so the other twist to the story, which I haven't put much out on social media about it, maybe I should, but her father um, came out of the closet when she was 2, and he announced that he was homosexual. The marriage fell apart. They were divorced, but she maintained a relationship with her father for years until, and now it's all clear to me, until her first marriage fell apart because her father took in her ex-husband. And when we were dating, I'm
Mm.
like, why would he do that?
Right.
Why in the hell would your father do that to you? And what her story, which again, she's very convincing storyteller. He's like, well, he's gay and he was attracted to him. And I validated that. So I mean, I dug into everything. I looked up county records in Florida where her father had resided, and sure enough, this gentleman lived with her along with his life partner and some other woman who I had no idea who this other woman is, but he did live there for like a year to 2 years. And so it's all clear to me now that she more than likely cheated on her first husband as well. And
Okay.
yeah, and the other red flag, Joe, I mean, there were several of them. The other red flag is our marriage started to unfold. She would start to ask me for my phone. I need to see your phone. I need to have access to your emails. Well, my phone was never password protected. You could just swipe it and you're in. She had my login information from my personal email address, so she could look in it. But the other thing I should have said is, let me see your phone. Let me
So
see your emails.
so we have between my girlfriends and I, we always say the smeller's the feller. So anytime you
Right,
start
right.
throwing out accusations, it's like it's because it's you. So that never dawned on you, JD, that it was her that was doing any of it. It just something that never crossed your mind.
Well, I'm done kicking myself for that, but it wasn't until the night before our first mediation. I'm talking to family members. I got a large family. They were calling me, give me support. And my sister-in-law said to me, "You know what? The guilty are usually the accusers."
Yeah.
And it was that night, the first time I ever went into our AT&T phone records, and I didn't know how to do it. I had to call AT&T to get some guidance on how to do it, and it was then that they informed me, which I was a primary account holder. It
Right.
was then that they informed me, oh, by the way, your daughter Katie is the primary account holder. I'm like, she's 16. What do you mean she's a primary account holder? Who did that? So I looked at some numbers from Texas. A Texas number jumped out of me. And when we were having difficulties, my now
wasn't an
ex
806 number, was it?
Right.
no, it was not. It was not.
That's good. We're all at ease, all of us in Texas, all of our
It
lovely
was
Texas peeps.
if memory serves me, it was a 943 number. But
943.
yeah.
Huh.
So her ex-boyfriend had moved down to the Texas area, and she when we were having difficulty, she would commented to me one day, "Oh, by the way, I've looked up so and so on Facebook. I didn't friend him or anything, but I looked him up." And so when I saw the Texas number, I thought, "Oh, damn, she's been reaching out to her ex-boyfriend or
Well,
something."
because all my exes live in Texas,
All
JD.
your exes live in Texas. Well, turns out to be foolish me. I called that number without even thinking that night. I'm like, I'm just going to call the number. And, I didn't even think twice. What happens if somebody answers, right? And turns out I went to voicemail, and it was a girlfriend from the neighborhood who was the mother of one of my son's best friends, still best friends with my son today.
Oh.
And she would later testify against me in court. She came out of the woodwork to testify against me in court. And so, yeah. So I had a ton of red flags. There were a ton of red flags that I missed. The other huge red flag is I wanted somebody to evaluate her medications. I thought the combination of her autoimmune medications were causing all of her health issues, cardiac issues, you name it. mean, we went to doctor after doctor after doctor. She had all sorts of cardiac exams done, but never, and I was there right by her side, but never once did she say, oh, by the way, I'm taking 2 different formulations of amphetamines.
My gosh. And
Golly.
I
And
mean,
yet
you know
she,
how strong Adderall is? Like I have like my kid on the most minimal dosage of Adderall just because you know how addicting it is and how,
yeah,
because if you take yourself off of it and you do talk about it in your book, she did take herself off of it. And when you do, because it messes with your head, I mean, there's a lot of side effects to that. So yeah,
absolutely.
definitely. And then
And
taking 2 types, that's just wow.
well, and at one point she was taking 3 types because I would discover
Oh my
later, I would discover as I dug into things further, I would discover for 2 years she was using our kids to supplement her supply.
God.
So our son had been legitimately diagnosed with ADD in 4th grade, 5th grade. He got off it his sophomore year in high school because he started working out, didn't like the appetite suppressant. He's done just
Mhm.
fine, educationally. And but yeah, she continued to fill those in his name, and then brought our daughter into the mix. And I mapped it all out on spreadsheets. Originally, when I handed over the manuscript for the book to the publisher, I had spreadsheets and stuff in there. No, they're like, no, but I'm like, people are going to want proof. And so yeah, I mapped out when she filled her private scripts and when the kids were filled, and she had 600 days worth in their names.
Oh
So it
my
was,
gosh.
20 months worth across both kids. And what
For 1 year.
I would also discover, and again, I did a ton of research on this. I discovered that the doc who I believe was prescribing them to her for a while. I went to some of the appointments with this guy, and he was a whack job. We paid
Ugh.
him cash. We paid him cash, and he did a bullshit exam and sent her on her way with prescriptions. Never knew what the prescriptions were, but turns out as I dug into him, the DEA was all over him, as well as the North Carolina Medical Board, and his license was suspended.
So is this
That
weird? Like how does someone like her find someone who she needs to provide that? That just
I,
seems too. I
she,
don't believe in coincidence that much.
Sketchy
no,
people
no,
will
no.
find sketchy people, I
It's like they
promise.
grab.
Absolutely. You learn how to doctor shop, and she also bounced around pharmacies. I mean, she went to several different pharmacies. I mean, I mapped
Wow.
them all out. I looked up store numbers and locations, and
You know
yeah,
what, JD, this is so wild because, like I've mentioned, both of my sons have been on Adderall and are on Adderall, and I have to go like clockwork to the doctors,
yep.
and they have to have a 3-month checkup. I have to present my ID, and I can't fill it before the 30 days. I have to wait. I just don't even know how people like that do it because I can't even get my doctor to do it, and she knows like legitimately my son needs it.
They eventually shut it down,
Hmm.
and I talk about it in the book when it was shut down. And so, what did she do? She made her way to a new psychiatrist who would end up in court and would testify that she's not a drug addict, she's not abusing things. And my attorney filleted her and filleted her records, and the fact that my wife, now ex-wife, my ex-wife, went to her, and it was in her records that she asked for specific medications because she
Hmm.
lied. She lied to her because, again, this is our broken system. She lied to her and said my previous therapist has had me on this for 10 years for my autoimmune disease. I get fog brain from my autoimmune disease, and this physician's like, okay, whatever you want. Wrote her whatever she wanted. But
So
our family practitioner, who had been our family practitioner for years, he would allow her to simply call in refills. Simply
he
call
was
in
one of the
refills.
good old boy doctors, right?
Yeah, and I knew that because my son was no longer a minor, so I didn't bother getting his stuff. But my daughter was a minor, so I got her medical records from that practice, and I unsealed all the medications that were private in her prescriptions, and found out what they were and who wrote them. And they allowed it. People ask, did you do anything against this guy? I filed a complaint with the North Carolina Medical Board against
Oh,
this physician, laid out all the evidence that I had. They took 3 months allegedly to investigate, came back and said, yeah, we found some issues, but nothing to substantiate that he violated medical practice or something to that
oh,
effect.
JD, I watched a case where the doctor had gone in to perform some miracle surgery or whatever, and it had actually the people ended up dying because of this. He never even went to school for any of this stuff, and he was just performing these surgeries. They like slapped him on the back of the hand, and it wasn't until somebody put pressure on him and said, "Hey, you really need to look into this guy," that he actually got in trouble for it. But he wasn't originally, even after people had died because of it. I mean, it takes like an act of God basically just to get some of these doctors and
Yeah.
what is it called, disband,
Disbarred.
disbarred.
Yeah, they get their license suspended. Sylvia, I think you made a comment. You're right. It wasn't always that way back in the day. The regulations weren't always that tight. So it wasn't until, so in 2011, 2012, when she was doing it, the regulation, it was a Schedule II controlled substance, but the regulations weren't that tight that you need to be seen every 30 days. She had one prescription in our kids' names that they filled 90 days worth, and that's unheard of. Now it's unheard of, but yeah. So yeah, and that's just, like I said, that's just the tip of the iceberg. But it was her underlying mental health illness that was unleashed, and it was unleashed. People say, "What do you think triggered this after 17 years?" And my theory is she reconnected with her father, who she had been estranged from for 10 years. Okay, she bashed the hell out of her father, to me, painted the picture that he was a deadbeat dad, didn't pay child support, didn't do this, blah, blah, blah. When our son was 4 or 5 years old, they knew about grandpa. They never met grandpa. And he simply said to my wife at the time, "Why don't you just call him?" And she did.
Right.
And they reconnected, and I supported it. I'm dumb me, right? I'm like, hey, listen, I don't want you to get hurt again by this guy, but I will support this. Little did I know that it was probably her hurt that caused the
divide between them.
Yeah, the rift between them. So when they reconnected for 5 years, and after 5 years, he suddenly had a massive heart attack at a very young age, given that he was gay. In Florida at the time, they didn't recognize gay marriage or anything. They never got married, but she had to make the decision to take him off life support after his massive heart attack. And then 2 or 3 years later, his life partner for 23 years suddenly passed away. And these two guys were very important to her in her childhood, through her teens, up until, I believe, her first marriage collapsed. And so I think the guilt from all of that pushed her to fill that void. And I believe, and she stated in her deposition, I have no records to prove it, but I believe she started abusing prescription drugs in 2008, 2009. I was with a different employer then, so I didn't have access to the records.
Wow.
So then, JD, I'm trying to remember that we only have a limited time here tonight. And so how does all that, if you can get us on the roller coaster that gets us to the zenith of your story, can you take us to, a little bit of time right before things happen, and then kind of help us and the audience kind of understand, like, as one person saying, the meat of your story, if that makes sense. Not your story. Of the book, I guess? Maybe the meat of the book?
No, because I want to say book, but I'm like, no, my gosh, this is his story.
Right.
His story.
But and I will say this. I am fighting tooth and nail inside me to keep as quiet as I can, JD, because there's so much that you've said. I am more intrigued with, and I didn't read the book, I'm more intrigued with hearing a lot about how you process this and go through this mentally. How did you handle this? Because my wife is a therapist, and so we have a very pro mental health home. And so when I hear the stuff you're going through, my mind automatically thinks, "Gosh, this is some therapy this guy has had to go through. I bet, to come out on the other side to be in a better spot to talk about it the way you are." So I'm not asking any of those things, though.
No. Hold on. Dr. Pineapples is on here because JD, I think it's in your book, because I also listened to a podcast. You go on to tell that the therapist that she was seeing, which we don't even know if she was seeing a therapist, right? Or do we know?
Well, she was. She was. Yeah.
The therapist was the one who put in her head that you were cheating on her, right?
According to my now ex-wife. Yeah.
Right. According to her, the therapist was the one. So I'm curious, Dr. Pineapples, if you can answer. As a therapist, do you come out and say, yeah, he's cheating on you, without actually meeting the other party? Do you say that? Is that something that you throw out there like that? I'm going to, hopefully she can answer.
If she's still watching
If she's still watching, yeah.
I would venture to think my wife, I've never heard my wife say stuff like that. A lot of the things she says, she's always like, We help them. See, there's
Okay.
okay.
She came on
So
here.
she
Thank you so
responded.
much.
Yeah.
So, okay, she's a therapist. She would never say that because I just,
Well,
I was just like, I don't know anything about therapy. I need to go see a therapist, but I don't. Anyway, totally different story. Um, so when you said that she had said that, I'm like, and then all of a sudden the therapist, oh, well, I'm just gonna, go ahead and take some leave there. So she totally just made that up, JD.
Yeah, I believe she made that. I believe she made that up. So when she started the accusations, 4 or 5 years prior to that, it was a different therapist that she came home and said, "Yeah, my therapist." She went to see a therapist, which I supported after her father's death. Well, I'm like,
Right.
great, great, great. And I offered to go meet with this therapist, especially when she came home and said, "Look, I'm working in my office. If I wasn't traveling, I work from home." And she's like, "My therapist says I need to have access to your emails and to your phone." And I'm like, "For what?" I got defensive, of course. She says, "Well, she thinks you're cheating on me." I said, "Based on what? What would you have told her?" I said, "Let's go." I said, "Let's go meet with her." And of course, then quickly within the next couple of weeks, I was allegedly told that this therapist is no longer practicing, that she decided to stay home with her kids. But I dug into all of that. And she only saw that therapist 5 times. So my thought is that therapist would not fill what she was looking for. She was a nurse
Right.
practitioner. Yeah, yeah. So she moved on. But yeah, I mean, how I processed it all. So in the spring of 2014, the wheels really came off. The accusations of infidelity became greater. The mother-in-law got involved. We were on a beach trip in June of 2014 that the mother, out of the blue, threatened to kill me. It's on the back cover of the book. That she threatened to kill me. If you put your hands on my daughter, I will kill you. Perhaps you're addicted to porn. Perhaps you're addicted to drugs. There's something going on with you, Dan. Perhaps it was something in your childhood. So they were building the story that I was controlling, I was abusive, I had mood issues. And I would say to your audience, the biggest mistake that I made is I kept it all to myself. I've got a huge family and a large network of friends and colleagues, but I relied on nobody. I told nobody.
JD,
Ultimately, I would become a broken man, and in the interest of time, I would end up in a psychiatric facility in the spring of 2014 for 9 days across 2 different facilities. I was
on
involuntarily
your own
committed.
accord, kind of thing, or
No, I was involuntarily committed by the same family practitioner that allowed my now ex-wife to fill prescriptions in my kids' names for 20 months.
gosh.
Yeah, yeah. And
Oh my
so, yeah,
gosh,
in
JD.
less than 2 minutes with his back turned to me because it was a hellish weekend. I won't get into all that happened, but she called the cops on me. And I would later discover when we subpoenaed my medical records and her medical records, she was writing letters behind my back
yeah.
to my psychiatrist and to the family practitioner. She set me up. She broke me down. She set me up. I go to see him because I was experiencing the spring of 2014. I started to work out 3 days a week, lifting some weights. My son inspired me. Hey, Dad, because I was 245, I was 250. And started working out. And in less than 6 weeks, I lost 35 pounds. Then it was 40. Then it was 45. Then it was 50. And then I became concerned because I started having tingling in my fingers and toes, intestinal issues, difficulty swallowing, dizzy spells. And I thought, okay, maybe this feeds into her mood issue. Maybe I've got something going on physically, like a brain tumor or something that's causing what she thinks is a mood issue.
Right.
And so I go in September of 2015 as a follow-up visit. No, September of 2014 as a follow-up visit for all the weight loss. I had some enzymes that were way off. I had white blood cell counts through the roof, liver enzymes that were off, a couple of other enzymes that were well beyond normal, an enzyme called
If that was
creatinine.
autoimmune disease or something too, huh?
Yeah, yeah. So ultimately, I'd be evaluated for leukemia and early onset of Parkinson's and
Oh my
Alzheimer's, and
gosh,
they could
JD.
find nothing. But it was in September of 2014 that we had a crazy weekend. We talked about separation, and I was a broken man when I went to see him, and she was right there by my side. The loving support.
Supportive.
Yeah, telling him everything that transpired that weekend, and his back turned to me. I'll never forget it. I'm sitting on the exam table with my head to the floor, and he simply looks at me and says, "If you lose your family, what would you do?" And I said, I have no idea what I would do if I lost my family. So he interpreted that as suicidal ideation. It was that easy. And he said, if you
Yeah.
don't go to a particular hospital, I will have you involuntarily committed. And so I spent 9 days in there, and I came out. I stayed in the marriage for 7 months, whether it was right or wrong. It was more of, I don't know if anybody has read the book, I Hate You, Don't Leave Me,
Yes.
where they
Yes, I've read it twice already.
give you affection, you're walking on eggshells, they pull you back in, they give you a little intimacy, a little affection, tell you how special you are to them, then they turn around and punch you in the face again. That's what I dealt with for 7 months. Plus I had my daughter, 15, 16 at the time, vulnerable, gullible. She didn't want dad in the house because she was led to believe that dad was crazy. Well, what would cement that? Dad was locked up for 9 days. So that fed into mom's story. Her story was perfect. He's crazy. He's abusive. She would later accuse me of, being an alcoholic, abusing prescription drugs. Well, guess what? Everything she accused me of doing, she was doing.
The smeller was the feller.
Right. So
JD, I got it.
as I looked into her medical claims, I talked about the hidden prescription drug abuse that I didn't know about, but I also discovered that she had every STD out there. Every one of them.
I'm
And
listening
JD,
to
you're
you,
just
man.
like blessed that you don't have anything because
I've got-
JD is tested 3 times, right, JD?
Right,
times.
3 times.
Three
Yeah.
times, and he has not come up with anything. And guys, this is how manipulative, conniving, whatever word you want to use. I mean, she had it all. JD has nothing, and then seriously, it's just mind blowing. When I was reading this, JD, I'm just like, oh my gosh, because through this all, you stayed in it, JD, and I don't know how you did. Honestly, I don't know how you did, why you did. I get for the children because your values, but man, I mean, you hung on there, and I applaud you for trying to maintain a relationship and not throwing away your marriage because you
Yeah.
wanted to keep, but man, you suffered so much. It's just so upsetting.
Well, and my
So-
head was so screwed up when I came out of a psychiatric facility because I couldn't figure out how I ended up there, right?
Right.
And I was just living. To answer your earlier question, Jamie, I was living minute by minute, day by day. And oh, by the way, trying to hang on to my job, trying to hang on to my full-time job. And believe it or not, throughout all this, when I came out of the psychiatric facility, I was promoted 2 months later. So I was
You were
able
like
to,
a functioning,
I was,
whatever
yeah, I
the
was,
word is.
I was able to dial in. But yeah, I mean, people, when they read the book, they're like, damn it, man, why'd you stick around? Well, I stuck around and my faith was strong. It's even stronger now. I stuck around. I'm glad I stuck around because had I not stuck around, she may not have played that herpes card. She wouldn't have played it. I wouldn't have known about it. I wouldn't have looked at medical claims. I would never imagine that she was cheating on me. And to answer, I think you asked that earlier, Sandy, because my brothers and others would come to me and go, well, when I briefly talked to them about the accusations, they'd be like, well, maybe she's running around on you. I'm like, oh, no. She's in bed at 8:30 or 9 o'clock every night because of her autoimmune disease.
No,
Well, not
JD.
because of that, but she's on uppers and downers. And yeah.
So there was a part in the book where you talk about she was like a volunteer, and so she's out all hours of the night, and I'm like, oh, girl was busy. Okay,
She was busy.
was that not a red flag for you at that point?
At that point, it was not, and I'll tell you why.
Okay.
I mean, I know now she was busy volunteering. She legitimately volunteered for a very prestigious institution that had a program for terminally ill cancer patients who may have family members that are not in town, or their family members need a break. They have volunteers that go sit with these terminally ill patients. Now, I always supported that, and I thought, wow, how wonderful, how compassionate.
What a
and
humanitarian.
I thought it was driven by the hole in her heart from losing her father. And legitimately, she volunteered in this program. We went to a couple of fundraising functions. I met the social workers she worked with. We gave some money. And yeah, she was a very busy volunteer. She seemed to grab the night shift all the time. And she would come to me and say, hey, we have somebody actively dying, 8:30 at night. Do you mind if I go? And I'm like, no. And then I'd say, I'll drive you, because I was familiar with the institution. I'm like, I don't like this, the parking deck at night. It's not in a very secure location. She's like, I'll just call security. Well, lo and behold, she'd be gone from 8:30 till 6:30, 7 o'clock in the morning. So I know now that she was out doing what she did.
She was out gallivanting around with unvaccinated people. That's what she was doing, JD.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, yeah. Jamie,
JD,
I'm sorry. I keep interrupting you. I'm so sorry,
It's
Jamie.
okay.
It's okay.
I'm just, it's so perplexing looking at you, JD, because there's a part of me that, when I look at you, I think, is it safe to say you're the victim of some craziness, to say the least, right? Hearing you talk about this, it's hard to figure this was your reality.
Yeah.
You lived through this, man. This wasn't like a book you were reading. Like we read a book, or I was listening to some podcasts about your story earlier today, and I'm just sitting there thinking, you lived through this, man, and you are sitting right here with us telling your story. You're on the other side.
Yeah, the Lord is good. The Lord is good, for sure.
I applaud you, man.
Yeah, he saved me. And that's the funny thing. So, and I will always be appreciative. The arsenic thing on TikTok, got all the interest and all the love, and went viral. I didn't discover the arsenic stuff. I mean, because I had a psychiatric facility, I had domestic violence trials, civil. I had a lot of legal stuff in addition to my full-time job that kind of put my health issues on the back burner. It wasn't until 2 years after I'm certain that she began poisoning me that I discovered that. It was 3 or 4 months before.
How long?
It was 2 years.
2 years of poisoning?
Well, I think, no, she poisoned me for a year because we had separated in May of 2015. I was manipulated out of the house. She used my daughter. There's
so many questions to ask on that. There's so many questions. Let's just get to this part, though, because it's what you were saying earlier, the TikTok part. So for a lot of the audience who are here tonight, we've got some viewers and some people who are going to watch us in the replay. Maybe they don't, like myself, don't have TikTok, so they're not sure what they're there. Can you give us that little capsule of a story for us?
Yeah, it was less than a minute, I believe, and this was the weight loss ad that Sandy overlooked. It was just a snippet about starting to work out, switch from Coke to Diet Coke. That's what I did. I switched from Coke to Diet Coke, started working out 3 days a week. I'm like, this is awesome. I'm down 35 pounds in less than 6 weeks. So we posted that, and then we talked about protein powder, and then it was a quick clip that says, his wife was putting arsenic in his protein powder. So by the time that we figured out all my medical issues and everything else that was going on, it was confirmed through a positive hair and nail test that I had been chronically exposed to arsenic. So I had been exposed to it for probably about a year. And I'm certain that she was putting it in the protein powder. Whey protein. My son's like, Dad, he was away at college. But like, if you're going to start working out, you need your protein after your workouts.
Right.
She would pull that. I mean, this is how evil she was. She would pull that jug out of the cupboard and go, I'm certain you're putting something in your protein powder. I know you're putting something in there.
And so that's a lot of the things too, JD, in this book. She tells on herself a lot of times, doesn't she? She would just like, and I'm sure it was not intentional, but she would, just kind of like.
No, I think you're wrong, Sandy. I think it is intentional.
It is intentional.
You think so?
Yes, absolutely. Look, she told you, JD, right, that she was volunteering. So the hardest thing for anyone when there is to lie, because it means you got to start holding on to the false stories that exist. Yeah. The best thing to do is when you tell the truth, or you just move the truth a tiny hair off. So exactly why when you were going to some of her events, she knew these people because she was volunteering. She was actually there. She was helping out. So she just had to add that truth into the lie.
Yeah.
Someone's been reading. Look at this. Someone's been reading.
Evil. There are a lot of comments, everyone, and we will get to them. I promise. And JD, just so you know, there are comments coming in. People are asking questions, and we're going to get to all of them. Promise, because this is just too good not to. But JD, we just want your story is. I mean, it's a story, man.
So it's there's a ton in the book, and when I turned it over to the publisher, it would have been a 520-page book.
And they said no on.
No, they would have allowed it, but there were some massive revisions and some coaching.
Okay.
Yeah, but again.
So you're going to sell the director's cut book sometime?
Maybe.
Somebody wants a copy of that?
Yeah, I do want a copy.
With all the graphs and everything in there, the timelines?
Yeah, but the domestic violence trials in there, our 40 alimony trials in there. It's all jam packed in there.
She also went through how many attorneys, JD? 3, 4?
She went through 3. So her first 2 that were in practice together kicked her to the curb with about 6 months to go prior to our alimony trial. I think they finally realized her delusions of paranoia were off the charts. So, she not only, her story would be, and her therapist, who saw her 64 times over the course of 2 or 3 years, testified twice against me, believed everything that she told her. When I was hacking her routers, I put cameras in the doorbell, I was living in the crawl space. Oh yeah, the paranoia and delusion were off the charts. Well, that's from the Adderall. And for those that legitimately need Adderall, like your children and like my son did and like others need, if you don't have a deficit, it can be very, very dangerous. And she had 4 stroke-like events, 2 when we were happily married and 2 once I was out of the house. It's due to withdrawal.
And JD, you thought that those events were due to her
autoimmune disease. Absolutely. Because the autoimmune disease, I even talked to a neurologist because, again, I'm in the pharmaceutical field, and I reached out to a couple of buddies. Yeah, reached out to a couple of buddies and said, look, can this autoimmune disease, start attacking her mind and make her paranoid? And they're like, oh yeah, it could attack every organ in the body, including the heart, everything. So I bought it all. I'm like, oh, this poor woman, it's her autoimmune disease. It's kicking her tail.
So real quick, we're at 52 minutes. I think we're probably going to go a little over, which is fine if you're okay with that.
If you're okay with it, JD,
I'm good with it.
I'm going to ask a couple of questions though, real quick from the audience, because I know some of them may have to leave, and so I want to make sure we get them out before. You know what I mean? So just be a little respectful. So I'll go up to the top here. We'll start with Dr. Pineapple. Dr. Kisa says, "Would you talk about the book title, Dance with the Devil and Her Mother?" And in tandem with that, though, JD, there's a couple of questions or comments that are kind of related to that. So I want to put those on real quick.
And he is going to talk about towards the end. Oh, but yeah, in case he leaves. Yeah, go ahead.
All right. So Joanne says, "I would like to have your story, please. Let me know how I can buy it." And again, my wife says, good Lord. The comments just keep coming up. Where is the best place to get your book? So if you could describe the book title and then let people know where is the best place to purchase your book.
So the third gift, My Dance with the Devil and Her Mother. So you can find it on Ballast Books, BALLAST Books, or certainly Amazon, Target, Walmart, any of your major online retailers. There's an ebook available, and an audiobook was just released 2 weeks ago. So I narrate the audiobook. Just to give you a little backstory on that, I did it from the closet, from my bedroom closet, with blankets and towels, and every blanket I owned, I set it up. And actually I had a guy out of Texas help me with
awesome, with
the logistics and all that, and I think it turned out pretty good. But there's an audiobook available as well. The one thing I want to mention before I forget too, I self-funded the book. I'm not looking to get rich off of it. What I'm looking to do is to be able to give back to start a couple of organizations, because I had a lot of people, not necessarily financially, I had a lot of wonderful people in the last 5, 6, 7 years step up for me, for my kids. And so I've already been working with an organization called the Mercy Center for Women out of Erie, Pennsylvania, for abused women, addicted women, women and children living together, trying to get back on their feet. So I've provided some support. I would like to do more. But my main focus is a good buddy of mine. His son was a decorated military guy, still active duty at the age of 26, came home and took his life stateside. So I've committed to him. He knows that I self-funded this. He knows it may take some time, but if and when I break even, I'm committed to provide some funds to his endowment fund. So he created an endowment fund for his son at Appalachian State in North Carolina for their ROTC program. And then I have bigger visions beyond that. So again, I'm not looking to keep any of the money. I'm looking to be able to give back to others. And I'm really
JD. That's awesome.
I'm looking at my big focus is really around mental health and PTSD and what have you. Whatever the good Lord thinks is I need to do with it, I will do with it. But My Dance with the Devil and Her Mother, my daughter had some issues with that title early on. She's become comfortable with it. But yeah, I mean, the devil is real. And the devil took a hold of her, and I added "and her mother" because her mother quickly became her sidekick. Her mother, again, I had a wonderful relationship, happy marriage and a wonderful relationship with her mother for 20 plus years. Never had a cross word with this woman, but she turned on me like a cobra. But I now know she would never give me the forum to have a conversation with her about what was going on. Never. She just turned on me.
She just took her daughter's word and ran with it. And
but I also think looking back, I think that her mother also recognized the issues that her daughter had. I think, and I get it. Blood is thicker than water.
Right. That's what I was gonna say. It's gonna be challenging for a mother, especially, right, to not be in her daughter's corner, because it's always gonna be that scratching thing, that even the tiniest bit of what if I didn't believe her, or what if I was and I'm her mother. I should be the one who wholeheartedly believes her and should be in her corner. And
that was the hardest testimony to sit to and listen to when she testified against me. I had to be as stoic as I could be, but just the venom that she had for me, that she essentially said she's disliked what I've done to her daughter for the last 2 decades.
Which that was not even the case at all.
No.
Oh my God.
No.
So I do want to ask on that later, but real quick, a couple more comments.
Please.
Sylvia says, insane. Mind games can be brutal and make you feel like you really are crazy. You begin to think maybe something is wrong with you. That's like gaslighting, isn't it?
It's like gaslighting, and that's exactly what I was going to talk to JD about. I'm like, JD, are you up with the terms of gaslighting? Because that's what
I
am. You.
I am. And Sylvia, that's a brilliant comment. I started to think there's something wrong with me. I didn't talk about it much in the book, and if I write a second book, I may write my parents' story. Rest their souls. But my mom lost both of her parents within 6 weeks when she was 16. I made this mistake.
Mom?
My mom. Yeah. I made this mistake in the emergency room, and it's not in the book, but I made this mistake in the emergency room of saying, oh, by the way, I think my mom's parents, I know my mom's father took his own life. And they're like, oh, okay.
History.
So I might tell her story, because she's an incredibly strong woman that survived a very traumatic childhood. And anyhow, I won't get into all of that. But I did begin to believe that I was crazy, that I had mood issues, and it was me. But it wasn't until our domestic violence trial. So we had a once I was out of the house. I was out of the house for like 3 or 4 months. I'm in Pennsylvania for a christening. I get a call from the sheriff's department. I'm thinking, oh man, maybe something happened to her, because I was waiting for that phone call that she had a stroke, had a massive heart attack, and died from the abuse of the amphetamines. And I'm not wishing that on her.
Right.
But I thought that was the phone call, and I returned their call, and I'm like, yeah. They're like, no, we got some papers to serve on you. I said, for what? They said, your soon-to-be ex-wife has filed domestic violence charges against you. I'm like, I haven't seen her in 4 months. What is she claiming? And they're like, well, we don't read them, sir. We just serve them. I'm like, well, I'm out of town. I'll be back, on Monday. You can come serve them to me then. And those, excuse me, all that was included in that domestic violence filing is also in the book. So I laid it all out. So I had to defend myself in a domestic violence trial. I'm with my attorney, and he leans over and covers the mic. He says, man, she's willing to say anything about you. She's gaslighting you. And I said, what does that mean? He said, look it up.
And did you see a picture of her?
Yeah, I did. I looked it up. And I'm like, wow, that's exactly what she was doing.
Yeah. Oh my goodness.
JD, I have a question for you.
Yeah.
So when you would take your wife around your family, when you, I assume you guys had family get-togethers. Yep. Did your family ever say, hey, JD, what do you see in her? Hey, she's a little, did anybody pick up anything on her?
They all embraced her. They all really liked her. But it was probably when she started the pill piece. My nephew now, who's a grown man, and a couple of my other nieces and nephews said, "Oh yeah, we could tell she was doing pills. We could tell from her eyes." I'm like, well, why the hell didn't you ever say anything?
That would have been my next question, Eugene. Is like, is that something that you wanted to know then, or you know what I mean? Like,
well, she on occasion, on more than one occasion, and again, she covered it so nicely. So Adderall, when you combine Adderall and the amphetamines with benzodiazepines and everything else that she was on, some of the meds I knew she was taking, but for her autoimmune disease, a lot of them I would discover when I dug into her pharmacy claims, but she would have slurred speech. And I would say, are you okay? She said, well, my speech gets slurred like that, when my blood pressure either gets too high or gets too low. And indeed, she had blood pressure issues. I was with her as she went through a tilt table test, a cardiac catheterization. I mean, these aren't benign procedures. But never once did she say, I'm taking a boatload of amphetamines, doc. Never.
Oh my God.
And I talk about it in the book, but she had a major bowel surgery 2 or 3 months before I was booted out of the house.
Yeah.
And I'm right there by her side. She had like 90% of her large bowel removed because she had chronic constipation. Well, once I dug into her pharmacy claims, I'm looking, all these pills cause constipation.
Oh my gosh. So
No wonder it all shut down. But she's in the hospital and she says to me, which I shouldn't have done, says, hey, do you mind going home to get my pill box? Because they're not giving me all of my medications on time. I had no idea what was in her pill box. Or, she would take them out of the bottles and I couldn't identify one from the other. So sure enough, my dumbass self brought the pills to the hospital. She wanted her amphetamines.
Oh my gosh.
Oh my gosh.
This is like an episode of House, I feel like, all of a sudden.
It is.
You know what I'm talking about? You're like unwittingly helping her get worse while she's in the hospital and she's can't. Anyway, it's crazy. Okay, Dakisa, she's saying, what happened for 9 days when you were in the hospital? Did you ever see the doctor's paperwork that involuntarily committed you?
Yeah, I have the orders. I had the orders. I had a sheriff, wake me up at 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock in the morning, pulling on my, gown, reading the court orders. So yeah, and then ironically, I got the medical records from both facilities that I was in, and the discrepancies in those medical records was unbelievable. In one part of them, they would talk about me abusing drugs, and the next part saying, no, he's not doing drugs. Well, I think it was because there were 2 other folks in the institution with me that had the same first name.
Oh.
So I get out of there.
Oh my gosh.
I get out of there and I have the medical records because I wanted to get the medical records because I was going to pursue legal action for them holding me longer than 24 hours. In North Carolina at the time, if you're involuntarily committed, you need to be at the time. You need to be reevaluated within 72 hours.
72 hours, yeah.
Yeah. Oh, no, excuse me. 24. It was 24 hours. 24 hours.
Oh, okay.
Not 72. And I saw one mental health social worker in the emergency department. I did not see another mental health professional for 68 hours. And so when I got out, my intention was to look at, doing some type of civil suit or false imprisonment or whatever. And then, of course, the wheels fell off in my marriage even more. But I got the medical records to see exactly what they had to say. I sat down with her and we went over it page by page by page.
With the doctor or with your ex?
My wife at the time.
Oh, okay.
And she seized on it like a crocodile, the comment about my drug
addiction. This was, pardon the pun, this was like crack for an addict, right? You were just giving her what she needed. Like this was like, yes.
They said you're abusing drugs. It says so right there.
Oh my God.
Man,
well,
JD.
I worked with my outpatient psychiatrist at the time. I'm like, let me get clarity. I said, first of all, I've had 3 thorough drug tests, a hair and nail test, a look back drug test. I didn't test positive ever for any type of drugs.
Except arsenic.
Except for arsenic. Yeah.
I meant to ask this earlier. I don't know if I can ask this.
Go ahead.
Where was she getting arsenic from?
I had no idea.
She wasn't eating a bunch of apples, was she?
No.
Oh,
So
okay.
here's the other twist to the book. Once I was separated, once she dropped that grenade on me, I hired a private investigator. We thought we identified who the male was, at least one male that she was running around with. When we dug into his identity, he was a guy that was back and forth between PA and upstate New York, married guy, 35, young kids. And he had a PhD in organic chemistry. That's when I got scared, okay? But as it would turn out, it wasn't him.
Oh.
The phone number was and this happened at a mediation, the second mediation, where we say, yeah, we think we've identified, we believe you have an STD, we know you have an STD, and we believe we've identified who you've been running around with. So they go and we give them the phone number. They come back in, the mediator comes back in playing a voicemail. from one of our neighbors. It was a female neighbor and a female neighbor who our daughter grew up with their daughter when we were best friends.
Oh my God, JD.
Jay, did you get a refund on that PI?
I did. I got like $3,500 back from them.
Gosh.
And
Worst PI ever.
Well, there's a chapter in the book called Former FBI, which again, that was his story. All of my guys out of New York, they're former FBI. She's involved somehow, but I believe that they're right. I believe that the former neighbor was somehow involved, not with the arsenic poisoning. Some on TikTok have made the leap that she might have been. But when we subpoenaed phone records, we subpoenaed Time Warner Cable records. We subpoenaed their Time Warner Cable records for their home. Because I had her husband. I called her husband and said, look, how long has she had this phone? And he says, kind of threw me. He knew what was going on in the marriage a little bit. He says to me, can you give me your PI's name and number? I said, yeah, why? He says, I think she's been running around on me for 4 or 5 years.
Oh.
Anyhow, we subpoenaed the Time Warner Cable records. And, for those, most folks don't have a home phone anymore through Time Warner. Everything's cell phone.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
We had a home phone at the time, and her name, her husband's name, their 2 kids' names were on it, and my wife's name was attached to their Time Warner Cable account dating back to 2011, which we could never figure that out because Time Warner Cable leaned on cable privacy laws and said, you're going to need a court order.
Ugh.
By that time, I was running out of money. We had positive STD that she had. I tested negative. And we also had just learned that she destroyed her phone. So she restored her phone to factory settings, even though she was under court order to maintain the integrity of that phone.
And that court order was nothing. They didn't even hold her in contempt for any of that, right?
No.
So frustrating. I guess we lost Jamie.
Yeah,
But
he's fell asleep.
yeah, he's like, okay, I'm out. I can't handle this. I mean, JD, honestly, so in reading your book and everything that was thrown out at you, I equated your story and your patience to the patience of Job, because it didn't matter. Job never lost his faith. You didn't lose your faith. And I don't even know what to say, JD. I mean, you said your faith was all you had, right?
Right.
And you also, let me tell you, God bless your friends, because you have some amazing friends in your life. Your siblings are amazing.
Yeah.
And just was it Jane? I can't remember.
Alan Jane. Yeah. My brother and his wife. Yeah.
Oh my gosh. I have just grown to love them because they were so good to you. And, in a time where you had nothing, or you were nothing, or you were, reduced to nothing, they were there for you. And that's just so amazing to me.
They're my heroes for sure. So thank you for saying that.
Yes, they were my heroes.
They were there 24/7 for me. Yeah, and
Again,
I live 10 hours away. So, if they didn't hear from me, they're calling me, making sure I'm all right. Yeah. So I lived out of my car, lived out of a hotel for 3.5 months. Because I didn't know what end was up. I didn't know what we were going to do in the marriage until we went to the first mediation, and then that grenade went off. And then I'm like, okay, this is over. So now I need to start looking for a place to live.
Right.
At least temporarily.
And they were there for you. And another thing too, that really, kind of made it okay, or maybe Erin went up in a little bit of a, she had that letter of your daughter, that she actually kept that letter. And that was like, okay, she redeemed herself somewhat for keeping that letter, because I just knew how much it meant to you.
You've read the whole book then, huh?
Oh, listen, I sure have.
Thank you.
No, I told you I had to finish my continuing education, and I made myself, I finished it within 8 hours, and I'm like, I'm reading my book. I have a picture. My husband took a picture of me. We're at Lowe's because we're working on our house, and I'm reading my book. I'm at Lowe's, and he's like, I'm scared you're going to run into something. I'm like, nope, no worries. I'm right here. So
you're reading it as you walk through Lowe's.
Okay. She is. It's hilarious.
It's so funny. I didn't even know he got a picture. Oh,
if he's got pictures, put it out there. That's fantastic.
Oh, I'll share it with you. But anyway,
I appreciate it. Yeah.
Did you get to ask the question, Sandy?
Go ahead. What other questions or comments?
Yeah, no, we got to get to all these questions that are coming in.
So Anita says, JD, did you remarry? Did you have a hard time trusting again?
I am in a relationship. It took me 3 years to even venture out. I was introduced to a wonderful lady, actually through my daughter and a longtime friend. But I wasn't interested. I went on the date. I'll be honest. I went on the dating apps at the request of my daughter set me up a profile. I'm like, I don't want to do this. And I was on it for like a week or two, and I'm like, no, I can't do this. I can't do this. And so I was going back to the old school. If I meet somebody, I meet somebody. So I met a wonderful woman. We're doing a long distance relationship now because when I moved out of North Carolina, kind of impulsively, because I said, I've got to go. We dated for 6 months, and I said, just emotionally, I need to do this for me. I need a fresh start somewhere. And so we're doing a long distance relationship now. And yeah, I've learned to trust again. I don't know. You never say never, but I don't know that I would ever do the formal marriage thing again. But yeah. So
And you would never take creatine or protein again.
Whey powder.
I've got some in my cupboard a while ago when I started working out again. I got back in. I used to box in my younger days, so I'm back into the boxing gym. But I bought.
Oh, were you paranoid about getting back on whey protein? Also, sorry, that's just.
I was not. I did a funny post on Instagram that I'm going to give it a shot. I'm going to give it another shot, and hopefully it's arsenic free. Yeah.
Oh my gosh, JD. So, and one thing that I did ask you, JD. Hold on, I just lost track of what I was going to ask you. Let's just ask this.
Okay,
let me think.
When you come back. I'll ask this one. Sylvia asked Sandy, "How did you get a hold of JD? I think this is amazing."
So I initially found JD on TikTok, and so as soon as I finished reading the book, I reached out to him on TikTok, and I was just commenting on a bunch of his videos. And I took
not stalking at all, Sylvia.
I was not stalking. I took my shot, and he said yes. So
absolutely.
That's
yes. I'm happy to do it.
JD, what's some good? What do you feel like? Let's just say top 3, maybe, or 3. I hate doing top 3 because we always there's always too many choices, right? So let's just pick 3 tips or things that you want to impart onto the people watching tonight on anything that you feel like you want to pass on to others from your experience.
Yeah, I mean, I think the first one, which I touched on a little bit, is if you're going through anything in your life, or if you've got a friend or a family member or something that's going through anything, and find somebody to confide in. Please lean on somebody.
Was that hard? I want to go on that a little bit. Was that hard because you just everything that was going on, or I always think that it's hard for men to find friends or people to kind of do what you're talking about.
People have tried to pin it on the male bravado, right, and the pride thing. For me, that wasn't what it was. For me, I couldn't figure out what the hell was going on. I didn't know what was going on. I didn't know if it was me. I didn't know if I had some mood issues. She was working the circuit to try to pin people
against you.
Yeah, she absolutely isolated me. Absolutely. Wow. So I kind of walled myself off. So find a friend. Don't allow them to isolate you.
Okay.
Don't give up on your friend network or your family network. And I did one of my other brothers. So I've got 5 brothers and 3 sisters.
Oh, geez.
Wow. I love it.
Yeah. And so one of my other brothers, he's a character. He's my youngest brother. He jokes now. He says, yeah, you were MIA for 15 years. It's good to have you back.
Oh, wow.
Man.
Yeah. Wow. So she kind of, that's on me. That's on me. I told him that's on me. But whenever we would travel to PA or whatever, our focus was on her mother and her brother. She comes from a small family. We would get together with my family and all that, but we would stay with her mother. And, my kids didn't engage as much, and their cousins are now some of their very best friends. But and I probably wouldn't have confided in anybody. But once I got locked up, my 2 brothers, she called, reached out to my brothers because I think she wanted to toot the horn that, yeah, there's something going on. And he's been, diagnosed with bipolar, misdiagnosed, and he's in a psychiatric facility. And so I talked to them briefly before they took away my phone. And I said, nah, it's all good. It's all good. No need to come down. And they showed up. And I thank God every day.
I'm so glad.
Thank God every day that Jason showed up. And they saw what I failed to see. They saw that she put me in there. So and I talk about it in the book, but they set up a private meeting with my social worker to find out what the hell's going on. How do we get him out of here? How did he get involuntarily committed? And my brother, as it turns out, my brother's wife used to be the former assistant director for mental health for the state of Connecticut.
What?
And so she armed him with all sorts of questions on his iPad, and North Carolina is a single consent state. So they recorded that entire conversation with that social worker.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I mean, I left that out of the book too. I mean, we had to cut some stuff, but
I was gonna say I don't remember that, JD.
yeah, so they cut that. But so don't isolate yourself, whether you need to lean on the church, a deacon, or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Um, the other thing would be just, I mean, for me, what got me through it, and this is part of the reason why I wrote the book, really, was as I went through my journey, living in the hotel, living out of my car, you meet people, you talk to people, and you hear their stories, and you go, okay, I don't have it so bad. I've got my 2 kids, I've got my health, or my health was a little wobbly then, but I'm generally healthy. I've got a good job. Count your blessings. I mean, we
Mm-hmm.
say that. We say that. We say it, it's like a cliche, but I physically had to get down on my hands and knees many nights and count my blessings and realize that what I was going through, people were dealing with far worse, whether it was cancer or losing loved ones or whatever the case may be. And then the other piece of it is, it probably should be the first piece, is faith. I mean, when life was comfortable, I call it the 3 C's. When life was comfortable and I was complacent and I was confident, I lost sight of the man above. And
We all do.
everything
Yeah.
was good, right? I had
Yeah.
faith. I went to church. I did my thing. I said my thanks, but he wasn't the center of my world
Right.
until I needed him.
Mm-hmm.
And then he was. And then he was. So it would be faith, it would be family, it would be friends, and it would be just kind of counting your blessings and recognize that you'll find the strength somewhere. You find the strength somewhere, and there's a reason for it. And I quickly, within a couple of weeks after the grenade went off, after praying to him and asking him for negative test results, and I
Mm-hmm.
just started really thinking about that in the last couple of weeks. I'm thinking, my God, had I tested positive, which I could have very easily,
Yeah.
I don't know where I'd be with my kids. My kids wouldn't know who to believe.
Yeah, exactly.
Because before I got my negative test results, she went to my daughter and my son. My son told me, I wasn't talking to my daughter at the time. Went to them both and said, yeah, I've got undeniable proof your father cheated on me. He gave me herpes. I'm like, what? Why would you
I
tell
can't
her?
believe she would tell the kids. I wanted to slap her when she said that. Like,
I
don't be
wanted to
telling your
slap
kids
her
that.
too. Yeah. Yeah.
Don't be telling the children that business, girl.
Yeah. Yeah. And that was before I got my negative test results.
So that's a whole section that I heard a couple of podcasts earlier. I was listening to you telling your story to other people, and I don't know that I feel like I grasped a lot of that piece to it. And so maybe it's in the book, maybe it's not. But there's that aspect, and you've talked on your relationship with your children, but how they were going through all this, right?
Well,
Like from their point of view, how was, and I don't want to dive too deep in that, but I just more of pointing it out and getting your response to it. Like the children were going through a version of this somewhere
oh,
along all
absolutely.
this happening,
Hmm.
right? They were being fed, and I've been there, I've heard it, I've seen it. A spout or not a parent feeds the children stuff that makes them not want to like the other parent,
Yeah.
and now
Yeah.
forevermore that parent has this negative relationship with their children forever, and there's no hope of building that back up or anything. But you didn't have to deal, I mean, you know what I mean, you're not on that side, you were
Yeah.
able to
They were
come
my
out.
they were my biggest concern daily going through this. I wasn't focused on me and what I was dealing with. I was focused on them and thinking, where are their heads at? They spent their whole high school careers, my son, his whole college career dealing with all this nonsense. And once my daughter reconnected with me and moved in with me, which was the happiest day of my life.
Which I
Hmm.
did shed a tear because I'm like, thank you, Jesus. She saw the
Yeah.
light.
She recognized
Gosh.
mom's problem, and she came to me and said, Dad, what is going on with her? And I had already discovered her drug issues then. I
Yeah.
said,
Oh,
your
so
mom had
she kind of picked up on something, and
She came home from high school. She was living with her. She came home from high school, and mom couldn't walk. Mom couldn't talk, and there was dog food all over the floor. And she ended up having to take her mom to the emergency room
Mhm.
because she was having another stroke-like event. And I say stroke-like because it's not a legit stroke, but she was in withdrawal. Because once I was out of the house and once I discovered all this stuff, I watched her pharmacy claims and her medical claims like a hawk. And so she was interviewing for a part-time job at the time. Um, and she had to be off him for a while. So she got off him for like 6 weeks, and then immediately once she got the job, was right back at it. Even though she had this was her third stroke-like event, then she had a fourth about 3 months before our alimony trial, and 3 weeks later, she's back on the pills. I mean, I'm watching it like a hawk. But my biggest concern was my kids and where their heads were at, and I couldn't be prouder of them for the choices they've made throughout all of this. It could have gone off the deep end,
Oh,
but
for sure.
yeah,
Yeah.
but they
Echo's
have.
asking a question related to this.
Sure.
JD. She's saying, I haven't read the book yet, but did your ex-wife go to jail for poisoning you?
That's the biggest question. I
That-
think.
Thank you, Echo, for the question. I've answered that 9,000 times on TikTok.
Yeah.
Even though I've put out some other videos on it, but she did not. She did not, because by the time we discovered this, it was 2 years. It took us 2 years to figure it out medically, and I had been separated from her for a year. She destroyed her phones. She wiped 5 computers clean, and the physical proof, the protein powder, which I'm certain she was putting it in, it was long gone. So we had no physical proof. I did bring it to my attorney. I did tell her, look, I tested positive. And I wanted my attorney to bring forward the utilizing the kids for the drugs and her drug addiction and all that stuff. We did talk about the drug addiction a little bit in court, but my attorney, who I trusted, and others have validated this on various social media platforms, she's like, hey, in family law, the judges don't care if you're a drug addict, a pedophile, an abuser. They've all been awarded alimony. Our focus needs to be on the fact that she has an STD that she didn't get from you, and she destroyed her phone.
And even then, JD, you still wound up paying freaking alimony.
Are
and...
you what?
Don't give away the ending of the book, Sandy.
Okay. Oh my gosh, y'all need to seriously. Y'all are upsetting me that y'all haven't read this book. I told y'all about this 2 weeks ago.
Once I digested that, it wasn't as bad as it could have been.
True, but I'm still mad about it, JD.
Oh, absolutely.
Still mad about it.
My head is just spinning right now. Like,
people might be scratching their heads going, why the hell would you fight it? But North Carolina is a fault state. So in North Carolina, if there's proof of infidelity, there is no alimony, period.
Yeah. You can sue for alienation of feelings, right? What's the word? Of affection, yeah.
And oh my gosh, I'm sorry.
It's a great state. It's a great state if they uphold the law. But
if they uphold it.
Yeah. So, oh my gosh, I'm sorry. It's like, so even the fact that she had a sexually transmitted disease and you didn't.
Jamie, I'm not going to tell you how the judge interpreted it all. Even though, and I'm not giving away too much, there's a ton in the book, but even though her own OBGYN that she saw for 12, 13 years, he testified against her. They subpoenaed him.
And even that?
He testified, and then we had a national STD expert. And I'll give you another pearl that's not in the book. And I left it out there for privacy, but at this point, nobody will be able to identify it. But I go to meet with this national STD expert because she had some conflicting results.
Right.
She had the first one, and then she went and said, I'm going to go get the test he had done because I had a blood test done. She went and got it, came back that she was positive for herpes 1, not necessarily herpes 2. So she didn't have a sexually transmitted disease. Of course, knowing what I know, all the background that I dug into it, I went to my attorney, laid all my spreadsheets out, laid it all out, and I said, I want a medical expert to weigh in on this. And we found one in the general vicinity, and found it in the general vicinity and met with him. And in the first 5 minutes, he told us what I wanted to hear. He says, yeah, she's got both herpes 1 and 2, and she didn't get either of them from you. And he said it because she had claimed she got herpes 1 from her mother. And he said, well, when was the last time she was passionately kissing her mother? This guy was hysterical. But at the end of our 2-hour session with him, first 5 minutes was all we needed, but I had a bunch of questions. I wanted to understand the science. At the end of the 2 hours, he said to me, my now ex-wife did the same thing to me. I said, what are you talking about? He said, yeah, she accused me of having affairs and cheating on her when she was screwing a guy in Chicago. And was it you, Jamie? No.
Hush.
No. He's like, what?
What was
Yeah,
what are we talking about?
screwing 2 different guys, and he found out, and he says, yeah, she's nuts. And I said, do you mean that clinically, or are you just being flippant? He says, no, she has borderline personality disorder.
Oh
And I'm
my
like, oh
gosh.
my God, that's what they're saying my now ex-wife has. And his parting comments, which did make the book to me, and the guy's a prophet. He's a genius. He now works for a pharmaceutical company and heads up their HIV stuff. But anyhow, he's a genius. But he says to me, brace yourself. She's going to burn the village down. And
Yeah,
she
she
did.
did. Yeah, she did.
Was there
Yeah.
no I mean, I don't know.
So I guess final question, because we have kept JD on so long.
I'm
Final
This is
sorry.
question.
good.
Okay, JD, why did she do it? What was her motive? Was her motive to kill you and take your money? Was her motive? What was it? What was behind all of this?
People have asked that too. And I think
She didn't
here's
kill
what-
you. She kept you alive, but she was making you sick and
She
and hurting
tortured
you.
you.
This
Yeah.
this is all one thing that I think of. Anyway, go ahead.
Well, the crazy thing is what, as the attorney said, and as I said, why the hell would she play the herpes card? She played it because she thought she infected me.
Yeah.
I believe that. But I think, and this is my speculation, she was allegedly to be raised about family, trust, and honesty, right? So her and her mother beat that into me, and I beat it into me so much I got a tattoo on my chest with that. That she's all about family. And she would, I mean, this woman, as you will read, she would say to me, if you ever cheat on me, we're done. And I think she wanted
But
to
if
save,
I ever cheat on you, I'm going to take you out slowly.
Yeah.
That's what she meant to say.
I think she wanted to save face. She apparently wanted out of the marriage. Clearly wanted away from our kids, because she hasn't seen our kids since December of 19.
Really?
Yeah. And they're now young adults, and they've processed it, and they're working through it, continue to work through it. But I think she wanted to save face, that it was him. It was him. She had the perfect story set up. Controlling, abusive, has medical or mental health issues. Oh yeah, he was, got bipolar, and he was, locked up for 9 days. And then she wanted the icing on the cake of, oh, by the way, he gave me herpes. Her story was perfect. And that's why I believe the man above intervened. But she wanted to save face, that she's all about family. And she was in an abusive marriage. And as her mother would testify at trial, which I did all I could to hold my anger and my laughter in at the same time, was she finally found the courage to leave an abusive marriage. And now she's living below the poverty line.
Oh, don't even get me started on that poverty line. Don't get me started on those calculations, JD. Oh my gosh. Y'all, it's in the book. I promise. JD,
JD,
these are... Go ahead, Jamie.
I'm sorry.
Jamie.
I don't even know how to frame this, JD, but the amount of effort and energy and, dare I say, talent, intelligence or something for her to go through all this. Like, these are meticulous steps, like evil mastermind maybe, or something like that.
She's brilliant.
Evil genius.
Honestly,
evil genius.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to downplay it, because some of the most vile people, you know what I mean, they there's elaborate steps and plans, and you were the center of someone's evil genius, JD.
Oh yeah. I mean, once we subpoenaed my medical records and I got those letters, I'm like, holy shit. She wrote these the weekend she called the cops on me.
She was busy in more ways than one.
She was literally thinking and planning all this out, and had it in her mind. It was all like,
And I'm not so sure that her mother wasn't involved. And Sandy, you don't know this because it's not in the book, but her mother passed away a couple of years ago.
Oh, did she?
Yeah.
Oh, God rest her soul.
Yeah.
She wasn't very nice.
She wasn't very nice.
I'm so perplexed right now. Like, I just got to tell you that I always wish people with that kind of energy and dare I say talent would use their abilities for good. But hearing how, I mean, this was a slim hair, JD. Had you not gotten tested positive or negative, this would not be happening around. Your story would be something completely different.
Yeah, we would have more than likely settled, and then I don't know where my relationship with my daughter or son would be, because they're like, who the hell do we believe?
Yeah, exactly.
So fortunately, I've been blessed and been able to lay out all of it. And people say, there's only a couple of people said, well, the book's way too detailed, but I thought it connected very
I don't
nicely.
like that negativity, JD.
Yeah,
This is
I thought
disrespectful
it
negativity
connected
there,
very-
JD.
I mean, there was so much that happened that it all connected nicely, you know, in the last 3 or 4 chapters. But yeah, it's been a journey
Sylvia
for
saying
sure.
Lifetime movie.
JD,
Yeah.
my first screenshot that I took when I read your book, and guys, we're going to end it because, my gosh,
Okay.
JD, we've gone over your time. We have to be so
I'm
respectful
sorry,
of your
yeah.
time.
Well, I
But-
appreciate it.
Yes, this I love this. To the good people of this world who truly live their lives based on the principles of trust, honesty, and compassion, continue to open your hearts for others in their time of need. To those who lack the courage and character to practice what they preach, may you one day find it. What that was like right out the box. I read that and I'm like, this is gonna be a badass book. So JD, thank you so much for being on my show. It has meant the
Anytime.
world. It has meant the world to me that you came on. Thank you so much. I thank you so much for sending me this autographed copy that somebody.
How are
is
you going
gonna
to
win.
decide who gets that?
So what we're gonna do is we're gonna take all the names that are on here. I'm gonna put mine on there more than once. No, I'm kidding. I'm gonna take all the names and then I'm just gonna put it in one of those name generators and I'm gonna pick it and the drawing will be tonight. So stay
Yeah.
tuned. I'll tag you in it. But
Yeah,
yes,
I wanted to thank you guys. It's been tremendous. I also want to thank all the audience and all the engagement and all those folks that have listened in live for an hour and a half. I appreciate it.
yes, I have some of the best people in my little corner and I absolutely love them. JD, thank you so much again for being on. Hey, maybe we'll do a part 2. Maybe I'll just have you come on and we can just banter. I absolutely love you, love your book, and I'm sorry that you had to go through that so that I could read your book and share it with the world.
Life is good now, so thank you. But I'd be happy to come back whenever.
Well, perfect. All right, everybody. I'll be back. I don't know if I'll be back next week. I'm not really sure. I can't come back from this. It maybe just be the ending of my show. But anyway, remember everybody, let's keep talking sheep. JD, don't click out. We're going to talk for a little bit, then I'll let you go.
All right, thank you.
Good night,
Thanks, JD.
everybody.
Thanks, everybody.
Good night, everyone.